Lecture 6, How to Stay Focused. People learn best when they minimize distractions and maximize their focus. Sounds simple enough, and most of us can certainly relate to the frustration of trying to concentrate while working or studying in a noisy environment or through repeated interruptions. On the flip side, most of us can also relate to the experience of sitting through lectures or reading content that was so long or dry that we struggled to stay focused. Whether through overstimulation or understimulation, all of us struggle with attention problems from time to time. Attention is the act of concentrating our mental effort on a particular task or event, and it's a crucial part of the learning process. Attention is what enables us to consciously think about and process information from our experiences, and the more we consider and process that information, the more likely we can store it for later use. Information from our environment that we don't attend to is quickly lost. You can be physically present in a classroom, sit through a lecture, and technically hear what the instructor is saying, but if you are preoccupied with something on your laptop or thinking about something else, like an argument you had with a partner, you're not going to retain that information. Despite its crucial role in learning, we also know that attention is a limited resource. Even when we are focused on something, we can only attend to so much information at once, and we can only concentrate for so long. In other words, our attention is limited in both capacity and duration. Anytime there's a lot going on in our environment, or when we are engaged in a complex learning task, our attention resources are gradually depleted. This means, to the extent possible, we need to be selective about what we attend to and the kind of environments in which we choose to study and learn. We also need to be careful about engaging in behaviors that are more likely to preserve and restore our attention, as opposed to the opposite. Unfortunately, research shows that we often unknowingly do things and put ourselves in environments that make it harder rather than easier to focus. In this lecture, I'll describe some things you can do to enhance your focus and ultimately improve your learning and performance. To start, I'd like you to take a minute to consider your typical work or study location. If you're like most people, you may be sitting at a desk with an open laptop, and that open laptop contains your email, which contains at least a handful of new messages that need responding to, and which is regularly updating and dinging with new notifications. Maybe you have an electronic calendar that's doing the same. Several open files you're reading or editing, at least one internet browser open, likely with multiple tabs containing things that you need or want to review, maybe with some music playing. And of course, your phone sits nearby, ready to ring at any moment. In other words, you're multitasking. Many of us claim to be good at multitasking. We even highlight it as a skill on our resumes. The problem is that multitasking is a counterproductive myth. No one is as good at multitasking as they think, especially when it comes to studying and productive work. While most of us can do two simple tasks at the same time, like walking and chewing gum, the same is not true when it comes to more complicated tasks or those that require a decent amount of mental effort and concentration. We may think we're multitasking, but researchers have determined that what we're really doing is task switching. And every time we switch our attention from one task to another, we lose some of our momentum and focus. Research suggests that multitasking decreases our productivity by anywhere from 20 to 80%. Rather than improving performance or enabling us to work faster and more efficiently, it actually does the opposite. I like to compare it to baking. Multitasking is like opening the oven door repeatedly during the cooking process. Each opening leads to a decrease in temperature and an increase in baking time. And if you open that oven door too many times or leave it open for too long, you're going to ruin the dish. In the lab, researchers have studied multitasking by giving people several tasks and then asking them to either complete them one at a time or simultaneously. For instance, they might ask participants to classify geometric shapes and count the number of low and high-pitched beeps they hear. Then the researchers record the speed and accuracy with which people perform the same task across conditions. These kinds of studies have repeatedly shown that when we try to split our attention across multiple tasks, we don't actually get more done, and we don't do it well. Instead, we end up doing less, we make more mistakes, and we feel more stressed and anxious. Other studies have shown that multitasking adversely affects how our brains process information on a physiological level. For example, psychologist Russell Poldrack has found that multitasking is associated with less activity in the hippocampus, which is the brain structure largely responsible for long-term memory. His research suggests that multitasking impairs our ability to form new factual memories and to apply prior knowledge to new situations. Another psychologist, David Meyer, found that multitasking contributes to the release of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, which are known to impair short-term memory, decision-making, flexibility, and creative thinking. If you don't believe me, here's a brief activity to try. All you need is a pen, a piece of paper, and a way to time yourself. If you're in a place where you can participate, I'd really like you to, so put me on pause if you want to gather these 3 items. Okay, I'm going to give you 2 tasks to do, and I want you to put me on pause again and then record the time it takes you to do both of them. Are you ready? Here are the tasks. When I say go, first you're going to write the sentence, I am not great at multitasking, and then you're going to write down the numbers 1 through 20. So 2 different things. I'm not great at multitasking and the numbers 1 through 20. Got it? Go. Welcome back. How much time did it take to do both tasks? Usually it's less than 20 seconds. Now, for the next part, I want you to multitask. This time, you're going to complete the same 2 tasks, but instead of doing them one at a time, I want you to switch back and forth between them. So you'll start by writing the first letter in the sentence, I am not great at multitasking, and then you'll write the first number, then you'll write the second letter of the sentence, then the second number, and so on. In other words, I want you to alternate back and forth between writing the letters in the sentence and the numbers in the sequence. Got it? Okay, put me on pause and remember to time yourself again. How long did it take you to complete both tasks that time? For most people, it takes much longer, maybe even twice as long, and you probably felt more rushed and flustered. You might have even made mistakes despite the task being pretty simple. So imagine the cumulative costs of multitasking when it comes to more complex or challenging activities. Our brains simply can't do 2 similar or even remotely demanding things at once. Like a bottleneck, our mental resources are limited in capacity. And when we try to do too many things at once, nothing is fully or well processed. So then why do so many of us still try to multitask? Well, as I mentioned already, many people believe that multitasking makes them more productive and efficient. But that's just not the case. Instead of helping us be more productive, multitasking actually makes us more scatterbrained and decreases our ability to focus and learn. Outside of that misconception, though, many people simply feel internal pressure to multitask. Our lives are complicated. We have many different responsibilities, and we all feel the constant push and pull of competing obligations. For example, if you're a student, you might have 4 or 5 different classes that you're taking, all of which have multiple assignments, in addition to a work schedule and social obligations that you're trying to juggle. Multitasking may feel like the only possible way to stay on top of everything. We also feel external pressure to multitask. Some employers identify multitasking as a required skill, and advances in technology and high-speed internet connections that make it logistically possible for us to work on multiple things at once have led to increased expectations to be highly flexible, willing to jump back and forth between assignments, and constantly available to others. Now, maybe you think you can meet these expectations, that you're actually good at multitasking. But research says you're probably wrong. In fact, research says that the more you do it, the worse you are at it. So how can we stop multitasking? And what can we do instead? In the remainder of this lecture, I'll describe some research-based strategies that you can employ to minimize distractions, maximize your concentration, and ultimately improve your learning. We'll start with scheduling, and then I'll describe some ways to select and modify your environment. Lastly, I'll explain the importance of taking breaks and of getting adequate sleep, exercise, and nutrition. To begin, one of the best ways to avoid multitasking and to maximize your focus is through the use of scheduling. If you want to increase the likelihood that you actually focus on one task at a time, you should literally set aside distinct times to work on different tasks. Start by making a to-do list of everything you need or want to accomplish in a day or a week. Prioritize each item on the list. and then devote specific times to working on each one. Include work and study requirements, along with other obligations and activities, such as going to the gym, doing laundry, running errands, and so on. Anything you want to accomplish. You should consider scheduling specific times throughout the day to do those things too. Otherwise, it's all too easy to get sidetracked. How many times have you stopped what you're doing to check a message or to respond to an email that really could have waited? How many times has a quick check of social media turned into an hours-long diversion? The key is to draw distinctions between your activities, stick to that schedule, and uphold those boundaries as much as possible. You can even set timers if you have to. Now, this doesn't mean that your entire day has to be strictly scheduled from the time that you wake up to the time that you go to sleep, but anything you need or want to do should be accounted for. And this will help to ensure that you actually accomplish those tasks while also helping to relieve some of the preoccupation and pressure to do more than one thing at a time. To the extent possible, having some consistency in your schedule, for example, always checking email at the same time each day, or studying at the same time and in the same place each day, will gradually make it easier for your mind to shift attention from one task to another as well. Once you've set a schedule, the next step is to carefully consider and plan your study environment. First, you want to choose a good location. You might be limited, but as much as possible, you want to choose a spot where you're least likely to be interrupted, distracted, or tempted to multitask. For instance, if you're studying at home, it might not be a good idea to set up at the kitchen table where you're likely to be interrupted by family members or roommates, or where you'll be distracted by the dirty dishes that are accumulating in the sink. A quiet office or spare room even would likely be a better choice, especially if it has a door that you can close. And if you don't have much space or privacy at home, you might be better off studying somewhere else, like a local library, a park, or a coffee shop. But be careful with that choice too. For some of us, working in a busy place, like a coffee shop, might be akin to working with white noise in the background, but for most of us, it's more likely to be distracting. Once you've chosen a location, you can also take steps to modify that environment by removing or minimizing potential distractions. This might mean organizing a cluttered desk, turning off the TV, wearing noise-canceling headphones, or even simply hanging a "Do Not Disturb" sign. Perhaps most importantly, you should disconnect from unneeded technology as much as possible. If you're not using your computer, then turn it off. If your computer is necessary to your work, you should at least close any extra tabs, files, or programs that aren't essential for the task at hand. This includes logging out of email and social media. Save your progress, bookmark websites, make reminders to go back to them, but close them. You don't want the visual or audio cues to distract you from whatever it is you are working on. Research shows that even if you aren't consciously attending to those things, they can still steal your subconscious mental resources. Kind of like how programs running in the background of your computer can disrupt or slow the functioning of programs you're actively using. You might not realize that your mental resources are being taxed, but they are. This is the same reason why working in crowded public spaces tends to have an overall negative effect on productivity for most people. On a related note, you should also silence or turn off your cell phone, and maybe even leave it in your bag while you're working. Now, obviously, this advice wouldn't apply in situations where you need to be immediately available or where you are waiting for crucial information, but most of us could generally do a better job of recognizing what's truly urgent and what's not. Do you need to confirm your appointment within 15 minutes of getting the notification? Does your coworker or client need a response within the hour? Do you need real-time updates on the news? Probably not. The more you practice disconnecting and setting boundaries with technology, the easier it becomes. And studies also show that periodically unplugging from technology improves our mental health, largely because our minds need that downtime. And that brings me to the importance of breaks. It's often assumed that the best way to increase productivity is to work harder and longer. As a result, it's not uncommon to see people skipping their lunch breaks and binge working for extended periods of time, especially when they feel extra busy or stressed. But however counterintuitive it might sound, research shows that taking regular breaks actually boosts productivity more than powering through. Our ability to concentrate is like a muscle. It becomes fatigued with use, and it needs time to recover between activities. In other words, our minds, like our bodies, can only function at a high level for so long before needing to be recharged. In addition, research has shown that during intense periods of concentration, our brains can actually become habituated to the task at hand, also making it harder to focus and to think creatively. The constant stimulation has a sort of numbing effect on our ability to think carefully about what we're doing. So taking breaks, even brief breaks, can reduce fatigue, alleviate boredom, restore attention, and ultimately improve the quality of our work. It's important to realize that when we take breaks, our brains aren't idle. Psychologists have used fMRI machines to examine neural activity and found that during mental breaks, when we allow our minds to simply wander, our brains are still highly active, especially in regions involved with long-term memory and planning for the future. Breaks enable our brains to further process and consolidate information on a subconscious level. So instead of viewing breaks as wasted downtime, you should view them as essential parts of your studying or work routine. You should also make a point of scheduling breaks between your activities and, if necessary, force yourself to take them. Now, you don't have to take a break if you're on a roll or in what psychologists call a state of flow, but the point is that you shouldn't feel guilty about taking a break if you're feeling tired or if you get stuck. Sometimes stepping away from a task and deliberately disrupting our thinking can enable us to see new possibilities and alternative solutions when we return. As far as what to do on your breaks, the key is to find activities that temporarily calm your mind or at least engage other parts of your brain. Doodling, reading something for leisure, or striking up a conversation with someone can all help. Anything that takes your mind away from work or studying and focuses it on something else will help you feel refreshed and recharged when you resume. Merely switching up your environment can also help. For example, there's a decent amount of research suggesting that spending time in nature is psychologically rejuvenating. Our brains respond differently to natural stimuli compared to more artificial sounds like electronic beeps or traffic. Urban, crowded, and business settings are more likely to activate your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain in charge of executive functions like attention and decision-making, the very part of your brain that needs a break. Being out in nature tends to have a calming effect and reduces activity in the prefrontal cortex. And if you can't get outdoors, research shows that simply looking at pictures or videos of nature scenes works too. Really. Meditation is another effective way to relax and recharge between work and study sessions. And there are many ways to do it. But even just closing your eyes for a few minutes can help calm your mind, reduce stress, and improve focus. If you're feeling especially tired, you might literally take a nap during your break. Plenty of studies have shown that naps can help replenish our mental reserves, enhance our ability to concentrate, and improve performance on all kinds of tasks. But you do want to be careful with the timing. Common advice is that naps should be between 15 to 30 minutes, long enough to help you feel refreshed and to restore your focus, but short enough to prevent you from drifting into a deep sleep, which can cause sleep inertia. That's that grogginess and disorientation that you sometimes feel after waking up. But these effects are also linked to your own sleep cycles, so you may need to experiment with different nap lengths to see how you feel. And though naps can boost our ability to concentrate, they are not a substitute for good quality sleep at night. Sleep helps your brain work properly, and a good night's sleep improves learning. Similar to breaks, your brain is not idle during sleep. While you're sleeping, your brain is still processing and organizing information. It's building and strengthening those neural connections, and it's helping to convert short-term memories into long-term memories. It's simultaneously pruning and eliminating unneeded connections and information that would otherwise clutter your mind and make your thinking less efficient. Unfortunately, people often sacrifice sleep in the name of productivity, but doing so can have counterproductive effects. Studies show that when you're sleep deficient, your decision-making, problem-solving, and coping skills are likely to suffer. Sleep deficiency has also been linked to depression, anxiety, and physical health problems, all of which negatively impact your ability to stay focused and engaged. To function at peak levels, our minds and bodies need sufficient time to recharge. Sacrificing sleep for work may mean you work more or longer, but it may be at the expense of quality and ultimately of your own well-being. You may feel like you can get by with less sleep, but research shows that most adults need 7 to 9 hours of sleep each night to function at peak levels. Having a consistent sleep schedule is also beneficial. I know it's often easier said than done, but the more you can practice going to bed at roughly the same time each night and waking up at the same time each day, the more easily your mind and body will adjust to that schedule, and the easier it will be to plan work during times when you are most alert and therefore able to focus. On the flip side, another way to improve focus is to engage in physical activity. Many of us find it hard to fit exercise into our hectic schedules, and like sleep, exercise is often one of the first things to go when we get busy. I know the thought of adding another activity or obligation to your schedule can feel impractical and overwhelming, especially when you're already feeling tired. It seems that exercising would just make you feel worse. However, physical activity is actually a powerful energizer for your body and mind. Exercise increases blood flow and oxygen to the brain, which improves your ability to focus and prompts your body to release endorphins and other chemicals that improve your mood and enhance your ability to cope with stress, all of which make it easier to learn. And you don't need to devote hours of your day to train at the gym to attain these benefits. Studies have shown that even a brief break for physical activity during a work session, such as a 20-minute walk, improves concentration, mood, creativity, memory, and productivity. As it turns out, taking breaks to eat is also important for mental focus. Lunch or snack breaks not only give our minds a rest, but also give us the opportunity to refuel. Our brains run on glucose, or blood sugar. And the more we concentrate or the harder we're working, the more glucose our brains consume. If our blood sugar drops too low, we gradually become more distractible and we have more difficulty thinking in complex or creative ways. Eating processed foods or consuming a sugary snack or drink can momentarily boost our glucose levels and improve our focus. But too much sugar can have the opposite effect and lead to cognitive difficulties. This is why you often hear nutritionists advising you to eat foods that are rich in protein, fats, and complex carbohydrates, all energy sources that are more long-lasting because our bodies take longer to digest and to convert them to glucose. This is also why experts often advise you to eat several smaller meals throughout the day, as opposed to large meals spaced out over long periods. Obviously, going too long without food can be bad for focus, but eating a lot of food at one time can also leave you feeling sluggish. The goal is to keep your glucose levels nice and steady so that your ability to focus remains high and steady throughout the day. And don't forget the importance of water, which is also essential to cognitive functioning. Studies have found that even minor dehydration leads to significant decreases in focus and performance, especially on complex cognitive tasks that require high levels of thought. So keep that water bottle handy. Lastly, grabbing a cup of coffee or energy drink can also temporarily improve your ability to concentrate. And this is the focus fix of choice for many people, myself included. But it's important to know that there are also potential downsides to caffeine. Too much can leave you feeling anxious or jittery and can therefore distract you from your work and interfere with memory. And if you drink too much caffeine throughout the day or too late in the day, it might also make it harder to get that important, restful sleep at night. And so it might be an occasional quick fix, but it's best to consume caffeine in moderation. In sum, all of us have trouble focusing from time to time. We don't have complete control over everything that influences our attention, but there are definitely steps we can take to increase our ability to focus. These include resisting the urge to multitask, spacing and planning your activities, choosing and modifying your environments carefully, and ensuring that your basic physiological needs for rest, exercise, and nutrition are met. Your mind, like your body, needs maintenance and care. The more proactive you are about selecting and creating conditions that nurture and restore your mental resources, the more likely your mind will function at peak performance.